us will find interesting, specifically looking at opportunities for lawyers in this sector. And of course, I'm sure that there's no one who is on this call who resides in Nigeria who doesn't know that energy is currently, particularly power, where, because energy is a broad mix, but we're talking specifically about power or electricity. We know it's a huge issue because for those of us who have been impacted by the new band, the band A of energy users, I'm sure it's something we all find interesting. So this session aims to examine the legal frameworks and challenges surrounding the creation, and adoption of renewable energy technologies, including the regulatory hurdles, contract negotiations, and environmental consideration, and the opportunities for lawyers in the midst of all the challenges, especially on how to diversify our practice and earn more from what I believe is one of the untapped gold mines of legal practice. To help us unpack this impactful topic this morning, we have a very distinguished panel, and borrowing a leaf from our last session where the social media session taught us about how to package ourselves and how to state our expertise on social media. It's my privilege to inform us that the people we have on the panel this afternoon are all distinguished experts in the field. So I'll proceed to introduce our speakers before we jump into the discussion this afternoon. So we have, first of all, Dr. Sanusi Ohiare. He's an economist, a researcher, an energy expert, and astute fund manager with 17 years experience of proven leadership and management abilities in public service, strategic planning, public-private partnerships, fund mobilization and management, education and change management. He's the former executive director, Rural Electrification Fund at the Rural Electrification Agency from 2017 to 2023, and the former Kogi State gubernatorial aspirant under the APC 2023 gubernatorial primaries. He currently lectures at the Federal University Lokoja and also provides technical support to the Special Advisor to the President on Policy and Coordination, Head Central Delivery Coordination. Sorry, can I just ask everyone, please, if you are not speaking, kindly keep your microphones muted. Kindly keep your microphones muted so you do not interfere with the...
Fuck you.
Host, can you help us, please? Just mute all participants.
I fuck your mother.
Please, host, can you help us mute all participants and remove Anj? Thank you, host. Host, please, can you remove the people who are interrupting our meeting?
Hello, black man.
I fuck your mother, black man.
Can you hear me?
Hello,
maybe you can make me a co-host so I could help you out.
Yes, I'm trying to do that.
Make me a co-host.
Oh, looks like
apologies to everyone on the meeting for this interruption. This is what is called Zoom bombing. We are unfortunately under attack.
So I'm making you a co-host.
Yes. So please make me a co-host.
Yeah. Okay, I just did.
Okay, thank you very much. So sorry, just a minute there, everyone. Let me quickly deal with the irritation we are having. Okay, sorry everyone again. Apologies for that interruption.
Hello, Marex. Hello, Marex.
Apologies everyone for this really unfortunate incident. We essentially have had what we call a Zoom bombing. People who are not interested in the meeting unfortunately got a hold of the meeting link and have been able to join and cause the disruption. So I'll just implement a few protocols to ensure we do not have that challenge anymore. Yeah. So everyone, I hope you can still hear me. Just a minute, still give me a few minutes to quickly deal with the interruptions we're having. So I'd have to put some restrictions on what participants can do to ensure we do not have participants who keep interrupting the meeting. Yeah. So can you still hear me? Sorry, Blessing, I can see your comment on the audio. Just a minute, is because of the interruptions we're having. That's why we're having that challenge. Our meeting was not properly protected, and that is why we've had the challenge with strange parties who have intruded into the meeting and essentially trying to hijack the meeting. And sorry, to take me a few minutes. My apologies to just deal with this, what are just clear irritants, people who want to join our meeting and disrupt the meeting. We apologize for these challenges. So I believe I've been able to remove all those intruders. Yes, indeed, Mazi Chika, someone is trying to do that. It's what we call Zoom bombing. So some people just got the meeting in, join, and are trying to take over the host privileges, but I've been able to remove them. I've also activated the waiting room so they can't join without my permission. So I'm able to see everyone who is attempting to join, and I only allow people in who I believe are not members of the people trying to disrupt our meeting. So I just want to be sure I've removed all those people. I can see a couple of them are still trying to join, but I won't let them in. Okay, I believe we've dealt with the emergency. Apologies to everyone. We're under serious attack, but I believe we've been able to handle it and remove all the people trying to hack into our meeting and take control of the meeting. But I'll keep watching out, and if I see any more of them, I'll ensure I deal with them immediately. Yeah. So thank you again, everyone. I'd already introduced our first speaker before we had the challenge. Before we had the challenge with the hack attempt, and thankfully we've been able to quell that. So again, let me just welcome everyone to the second plenary session of the NBA Darky Branch Law Week 2024. The second plenary session is Energy Law Practice in the Age of Renewable Technologies Opportunities for Lawyers. I'd introduced our first eminent speaker this morning, Dr. Sanusi Ohiare, whom we'll be hearing from soon, and I'll, of course, tell you more about him as we progress. The next speaker this morning is Temple Ezebuike. He's a senior associate in the a law firm of Templars in the Energy and Natural Resources Practice Group. Proud to join in Templars, he worked as a senior legal officer in a renowned cross-border power development company that is headquartered in Nigeria. He has extensive experience advising a broad range of clients, including project developers, sponsors, government entities, financiers and contractors in connection with significant energy and other infrastructure-related developments and investment. Temple, welcome this morning. We'll be hearing from Temple shortly. And then last, and by no means the least, and in fact the most special of all, because she's my callmate, permit me to introduce Zainab Kwaku. Zainab is an Assistant Chief Legal Officer at the Rural Electrification Agency with 15 years working experience both in the private and public sector. She attended Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, where she bagged a degree in civil law in the year 2007, and subsequently was called to bar in the best year ever to be called to bar, 2008. She has a postgraduate diploma and master's in development studies from Bayero University, Kano. She's a professional negotiator and mediator and an associate member, Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, amongst others. She's a member of the Nigerian Bar Association and Federation of Women Lawyers, Kano branch. So welcome to Zainab. I believe all our speakers are already on the call. And we'll just be diving straight into the discussion for this afternoon. As mentioned earlier, we're essentially trying to explore some of the opportunities that exist in the energy space that maybe lawyers have not exactly been aware of or have not taken the most advantage of. So to lead us into the discussion this afternoon, I'll be yielding the floor first to no other than Dr. Sanusi Ohiare. Dr. Sanusi, are you on the call? If you just put on your camera to indicate to me that you're on the call. Dr. Sanusi, I saw you earlier on the call. I just want to be sure you are still here with us. And you survived the unfortunate attack that we had this morning. Is Dr. Sanusi still with us? Okay, yes, I can see him. Dr. Sanusi, can you put on your, you can, okay, oh, I have to unmute you. Apologies, let me do that. Dr. Sanusi, you can unmute yourself now. Dr. Sanusi, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself now. Oh. Yeah, Dr. Sanusi, if you can hear me, you can unmute your mic now. Yes. Great to see you. Can you unmute, Dr. Sanusi? Indicate to me if you can unmute or if I need to help unmute you. Oh, you cannot. Okay. Can you now? I've given you permission to unmute.
Yes. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanusi, and apologies again for the unfortunate attack we had this morning. So I want you to get us off on the road on this discussion this morning. So my first question to you, just for you to give us in 3 minutes, just a quick overview of the most relevant laws and regulations in the power sector, just to help us get the conversation started.
I mean, the most relevant law should be the Electricity Act, of last year, 2023. Before then, it used to be known as the Electric Power Sector Reform Act. As you know, in 2005, that act, was enacted to basically kickstart the process of privatization and moving towards more of a commercial market, within the power sector. So basically that engendered these opportunities. Now we're talking about having lawyers within, renewable energy and the power sector. Before then, since independence, we've had what we call Nigeria Electricity Power Authority, NEPA, where, it was basically a monopoly where government was in charge of generating, transmitting, distributing power. There was little room, under that setting for, lawyers, to thrive. Yeah, they had 1 or 2 roles to play, but nothing major. Not until this act of 2005, that was basically the paradigm shift in the power sector that introduced regulations. Part of the reasons why this act was enacted in 2005, aside from the fact that we needed to bring in investors by privatizing the sector, we also needed regulations, you know, so that we'll have the now Nigerian NERC, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, to be the regulator. And of course, within NERC, we have a lot of lawyers because we are now dealing with the law, and we have a guiding principle. And of course, we need lawyers, you know, to be there to steer us in the right direction in terms of where the power sector is moving, if we're getting it right, basically guiding and supporting the NERC, and also guiding and supporting the players within the sector. You know, so for me, that was the turning point for the sector, and this is where the lawyers have come in. You know, but beyond just having lawyers, I would like to add that in the new power sector, you'll notice that lawyers do not just stick to their traditional role of being lawyers. For you to be a good lawyer within the power sector, you would realize that you would need to learn a bit of, you know, finance to understand all the commercial nature of, you know, of the sector. You would also need to know a bit of engineering. So you need to also understand some technical terminologies. And this doesn't apply to, you know, only lawyers within the sector. It applies to all other fields. So for me, as an economist and a finance person, I also need to speak law because we'll be sitting down with people that are power sector people. And these are well-rounded people that understand what it means to procure power, what it means to, you know, have regulations. So they need to speak all of this. So while the core of every lawyer should be, you know, interpreting the law and steering us in the right course in terms of regulations and the law, you notice that power sector players, especially lawyers, also speak, you know, engineering, they speak finance and the likes. Just wanted to point that out. But going back to your question, the major regulation that we have now guiding the sector is the new one that was basically revised and reviewed last year, called the Electricity Act. But if you notice within NERC as well, we have a lot of other regulations, you know, mini grid regulation, embedded generation regulation, so many other regulations, which is within is a delegated power from the Act, you know, to the regulator, you know, which they have, you know, also carried out in doing other, you know, regulations for the sector. But it's all derived power from the Electricity Act of 2023.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ohiare, for, you know, highlighting to us the very important and revolutionary law in the sector, the Electricity Act 2023. Of course, we'll be coming back to that and then focusing more specifically on, you know, on renewable energy on that. But I'll just move on to our next question, and I'll be throwing this to Temple. Temple, can you hear me? If you could, I've permitted you to unmute. You can unmute, Temple.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you very much, Temple. Yes, thank you. So, Temple, my question to you would be just, I mean, let's take it I'm a fresh lawyer and I know nothing about energy law practice. Can you just give us in 3 minutes a few hints, you know, just the highlights? What are the key services that an energy lawyer offers to clients? Can you just, you know, just give us a few high points of what those services are, what you do for your clients? Thank you.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Max, for that question. The way I would look at it is, for a new lawyer coming into the energy sector, your services would range across the various phases of developing a power project. That is where your services will range across. So you are providing these services alongside finance people, technical people, the engineers, and then maybe the business development guys or the project managers. But specifically for lawyers, there are like different stages in the development of a power project. So the first stage you have is what they call the pre-development stage, right? The second stage is what they call the incorporation phase, where you now, decide to incorporate the company that would undertake the power project. The next phase is what they call a financing phase. The other phase is what they call a project development phase. Then you go to the operations. So the project development phase includes the construction phase, right? Then you go to the operations phase and maybe the commissioning phase when you get to the end time or life end of the project. Now, taking those phases one by one, at the pre-development phase, as a lawyer coming into the sector, what those services would entail in that phase is, you have a client that wants to develop a power project. The client will come to you and say, as a lawyer, I have a process or power conception documents or conceptualization documents. Can you help me review this? We have this intent to build a power plant in this particular state. What are the risks? What are the market opportunities? What are our potential takers? Who can we go to for financing? How do we pitch to potential investors? So they would have prepared that already, and they would come to you as a lawyer to help them review. So this is at the stage that they're thinking about, developing a project, right? So at that stage, you have them review their pitch decks, and then review such conceptualization documents, and then advise them about how to make that project bankable in terms of and the risk available, the risk attendant to that project, their potential markets and other things. So you come in there to advise them in that particular area. Now, if the project develops and then say, okay, and then they go ahead to say, well, we have analyzed the risk and we can see that there's a market opportunity here. We want to go ahead to incorporate the project. We want to go ahead to execute the project. That is where your next service is now coming as a lawyer. Then they would ask you, how do you do this project? Do you have to use our current company now that's using to promote the project, or do you have to incorporate a new company, right? Now, in that instance, you as a lawyer would now advise them on whether to continue using a current company or incorporating a new project company, which they call an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. So in that sense, for new lawyers, right, a special purpose vehicle is a vehicle that is created by or incorporated by an entity to undertake a specific kind of project, right? So without going into details of why it is created, it's just for the project sponsors to protect themselves around that project. So they know that their liabilities and obligations in relation to that project is covered under one vehicle instead of the original company that is using the project to promote the project. So that SPV incorporation processes will be what a lawyer would undertake. So you help them incorporate, you help them advise, you help advise them on how they would, allot shares. And that is where your knowledge about CAMA, the companies and line matters, have to come in. They might say that, okay, I have like 1 million ordinary shares. I want to subscribe to 200,000 and then leave 800,000 to potential investors. So you now understand as a lawyer, the current CAMA says that every shares that you are, every shares of a company must be fully, allotted, whether it is paid for or not, but it will be fully allotted, right? So in that sense, you advise them and say, okay, that what you need to do to issue your share capital to the potential shareholders or investors that are coming in, right? And then help them prepare relevant, founders agreements, shareholders agreements, or maybe share transfer agreements. Now, after that stage, the other stage now is the stage of financing. So your obligation as well in that sense will now come into play. So for financing, this is what they call a debt and equity financing. So debt and financing is where you are getting money from banks or you're getting loans or loan credits or facilities from banks to help you, finance your projects. So your experience as a lawyer, your services will come in there in terms of helping them review that agreements with the debt providers, and if it is equity. So someone is coming to invest in your project to give you cash for consideration of equity. So your service as a lawyer would come in there in terms of reviewing the various investment agreements and whatnot. Now, once you move out of that phase and go into the project development phase, so this is where they have not gotten debt financing, they've gotten equity financing. They don't want to go ahead to implement the project. So they will go ahead to contract what they call EPC contractors that will help them design the particular power solution they want to use, help them procure that power solution, and help them bring it into Nigeria, install and commission. So your service as a lawyer would, in that instance, would be helping them review the EPC contract, which is the engineering, procurement, and construction contract, helping them review any long-term service contracts with the original equipment manufacturer that will be useful for the maintenance of the assets and stuff. Now, from project development, this is construction. You're now going to operationalization of that assets, which is they have now commissioned the power plants to go into operations. So application as a lawyer will then come into reviewing terms like operation and maintenance contracts with the O&M operator and making sure that the interest of the client is properly maximized and protected, right? Now, after that, you can now wait until the life end of the project. If you're lucky and you maybe somewhat long-term legal counsel to that project company, when they want to decommission, you can also advise them in hiring contractors that help them decommission, or advise any EPC contractor on how to properly decommission and make sure that the site that was used for the project was left in the condition it was before they started or for the commenced construction of the project at a particular site. So this is how I can describe what services lawyers offer or render in this sector. So it cuts across the various phases in developing and eventually operationalizing a power project?
Thank you so much, Temple, for that brief yet very expansive. You were able to really cover the field there. I really appreciate that. The only issue I have with you is that we didn't see your camera. We want to see your handsome face. So when we come back to you next, we'd like to see you put on your camera so we can see your face. Thank you so much, Temple, for that. And we'll discuss a little bit more about the issues you have raised, which is looking at some of the specific services that a lawyer and the opportunities that are available to a lawyer in that sector. So now I'll be moving on to our third speaker, Hajia Zainab from the Rural Electrician Agency. Can you hear me, Hajia Zainab? I'm trying to get you to unmute. Can you confirm you can unmute? Can you hear me, Hajia Zainab? Can you hear me? Hajia Zainab, I've permitted you to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself. Hajia Zainab, if you can hear me, kindly unmute. I've given you the host privilege to unmute. You can unmute and you can also put on your camera. Okay, I suspect perhaps Hajia Zainab perhaps has a technical challenge because I can't hear her yet, even though I've granted her the host's permission to unmute herself. And yes, and sorry, just some more housekeeping. If you have questions, please post in the chat column. The last 10 minutes of the session is dedicated to taking the questions. I can only see a question from Dama Najwa. Thank you for that question. Speakers will take it during the question and answer session at the end of the session. So I'm not sure I can get Hajia Zainab yet. So maybe I would have to jump back to Dr. Sanusi Ohiare. Dr. Sanusi, in your first intervention, you of course pointed out towards the importance of the Electricity Act 2023 as the fulcrum of regulatory framework in this sector. So I just want to ask you now, driving towards the main topic of the day, which is renewable technologies. So could you just give us an idea of what Nigeria, where we are policy-wise in terms of our energy transition journey, especially with emphasis on renewable energy, and what are your projections for the path that lies ahead? You could also just chip in a few words and even tell us what these renewable technologies are. Just give us a broad idea and then tell us in terms of policy, where are we and where are we headed? Thank you. Oh, I need to unmute you as well. Okay, sorry, I'll do that now. Yeah, you can unmute yourself now, Dr. Sanusi. Can you? I've granted you permission to unmute yourself. Okay. Okay, just a minute. Let me grant, okay, yes. Let me grant permission for you to be able to unmute you. Yeah. So you can unmute yourself now, please. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
So renewable energy technologies, as the name implies, renewable are those technologies that you can derive from renewable energy sources. So what it means is that these energy sources are infinite, like you can't exhaust them. So for instance, solar, this is something that is going to be there for till the end of time, as opposed to having a finite stock of energy source like oil. You can measure, how many barrels we're going to have of oil, maybe 40 years, 30 years or thereabouts. And you can do same for coal and other energy sources like gas. But for the renewable ones like, hydro, solar, biomass, and the likes, you know, they are really renewable. So it's something that you continue to use. So I think in a layman's term, that's, you know, this definition. Nigeria has been one country that has embraced renewable energy. I mean, though it's a relatively, you know, new sort of area over the last 2-3 decades, but Nigeria has been lucky to be part of all of the protocols in terms of adopting renewable. You know, if you look at it from way back, the Kyoto Protocol, now as recently as, you know, all the COPs that the Conference of Parties for, you know, climate change all over, you know, the world. The recent one is that by 2060, we're looking at net zero emissions in terms of Nigeria. That's what we've adopted. But before then, we have the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy and the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Action Plan that has the acronym 30-30-30, meaning we want to you know, make sure that renewable energy is adopted 30% of our, you know, power source by the year 2030. You know, before then we had the Rural Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, which basically I think is the largest implementer in terms of renewable energy projects in Nigeria. You know, where they said that by 2040 they were looking at having 100% penetration in rural electrification in terms of access, and you know, maybe 80% of that should come from renewable energy. So I think we are not doing badly in terms of the adoption of this technology, which has proven to be very prolific. It has proven to be very effective in, you know, especially providing electricity access to hard to reach communities, rural communities, isolated, you know, communities. So it is helpful as opposed to you know, trying to extend the grid to every part of the country, which may not be feasible financially, which the distribution companies may not also be ready for, because they are grappling with a lot of issues of trying to strengthen even the existing grid and the likes. And even within the grid, due to its epileptic nature, you notice that a lot of people now have, you know, renewable energy, have adopted renewable energy, you know, in their houses, the technology, where they have solar, you know, hybrid solutions they hybridize it with the grid, and as well as the diesel gen or whatever other technology they want to, you know, bring together in a hybrid solution. So I can remember when we just started, you know, implementing renewable energy back when I was in REA. We had a lot of pushbacks, you know, from the discos, because they felt like we were coming, you know, they were very territorial. So we had to go to the courts. And this is why it's also important to have lawyers, you know, just to interpret the law, to state whether the discos are the owners of every inch of Nigeria under their, you know, franchise area, or they are only owners of the assets that were sold to them at the time of privatization. And the interpretation came, and, you know, it was very clear that they only owned what they bought. And of course, any area that wasn't covered, you know, under you know, what they bought, you know, is open to adoption of other technologies and other players. And, you know, it was a watershed moment for us, because that was what helped us, you know, to be able to, you know, proliferate renewable energy technologies.
I can't seem to hear you anymore.
Oh, I can still hear him.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
So,
okay,
yeah, I can hear you.
Carry on,
yeah. So I was saying that, you know, the importance and the role of lawyers, you know, also became very critical at that point, because we had to rely on them, you know, to go to the court and argue out this. And this had led to this watershed judgment that we got, that allowed not just the Rural Electrification Agency, but anybody really operating under a regulation called the mini grid regulation, that allows for, you know, the adoption of technologies below the generation capacity of 1 megawatt and distribution capacity of 100 kilowatts, you know, to be able to go to anywhere, follow the law, follow the regulations, and then provide electricity services using renewable energy to rural communities that are willing to pay. You know, so if we hadn't gotten that judgment, and if we hadn't relied on the expertise of lawyers, we'll probably still be dragging with the discourse, till date. So, the importance of lawyers in this is very critical. And also, even within the mini-grid regulation space, they have a critical role that they also play between the regulator, the developer, and the rural, dwellers, in terms of having a tripartite agreement. So lawyers have to review. They have to, every party have to bring their lawyers to make sure that this is signed and it's fair, and everybody is happy. So the role of lawyers really in terms of developing our renewable energy resource, cannot be overemphasized. And for me personally, I've learned a lot, working with them and over the years within the space, and I'm glad that I'm also participating now in your law week.
Well, Dr. Sanusi, thank you so much for that, particularly for the shout out. Thank God that lawyers were the Voltron that came in and saved the day when the discos wanted to exert their monopoly and not permit renewable technologies. And of course, you've already touched on a very important point, mini-grids, which is going to be the crux of my next question to Ajia Zainab from the Rural Electrification Agency. Ajia Zainab, if you can hear me, please, can you just indicate by unmuting? I hope you can hear. Okay, perfect. Ajia Zainab can hear me now.
Good morning.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ajia Zainab. Like I told all of you, Ajia Zainab was called to bar in the best year ever to be called to bar in Nigeria, 2008. So welcome, Ajia Zainab. So Ajia Zainab,
Thank you so much.
Dr. Sanusi has touched on the issue of mini-grids. So I want to specifically ask you, can you give us an idea of what is, who is Rural Electrification Agency, who are you guys? And then tell us a little about the issue of mini-grids, just to give us an idea of what that is, because Dr. Sanusi has made it clear that mini-grids is something very important to the adoption of renewable technology in Nigeria. So help us just unpack that. Thank you. Please carry on.
Where do I start from? Well,
okay, I'm sorry, Ajia Zainab. Let me make your task a little bit
No,
difficult.
don't worry. Go.
You have 5 minutes to do that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to start with what REA is, or what we do, more or less. So we're an agency of the federal government that is tasked with providing access to reliable and electric power supply for rural dwellers, irrespective of where they live and what they do, in a way that would allow a reasonable return on investments through appropriate tariffs in an economically responsive and supportive of the average rural customer. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide alternative sources of electricity to people that are in the most remote parts of Nigeria, without overburdening them, and in such a way that the developer that is providing this service also makes his own clock back. That's literally what it is. We're trying to, how would I say it, give a 360 change to the lives of rural dwellers, or what we call people located in underserved or unserved areas, meaning places that have electricity for the underserved, but the capacity isn't quite enough and needs a little bit of a push, or people that totally do not have electricity supply. So literally, we're just trying to change their lives economically, socially, and in whichever way that would benefit them, so that the community progresses. That's the first part. So what other question did you ask? Were you talking about the mini grid?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, Dr. Sanusi mentioned to us, the fact that, the fact that at a point, the issue of mini grids needed a court judgment to make it clear to DISCOs, that's the distribution companies, that, mini grid operators are permitted to, set up even within their, what they call the exclusive franchise areas, essentially. So what we wanted to know is that, what exactly is the legal framework for mini grids? Is there a regulation specifically for mini grids? If you just let us know about it.
Okay, yes, so definitely. So NERC in 2017 created provided what you call the mini grid regulation. And that generally governs the development of integrated electricity generation, distribution, supply systems at the for a capacity that is between 0 kilowatts to 1 megawatt, more or less, either in what we call an isolated mini grid form or an interconnected mini grid form. The interconnected mini grid is the one that has connections to the discos, more or less. There's already an existing structure, a network structure. So it's more or less like you're augmenting whatever service you already have. Whereas the isolated one is one that's totally away from the discos franchise area. So of course, the regulation is the one that states the guidelines.
Okay, actually, I can't hear you anymore. I suspect
Can you hear me now?
maybe network. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
So
yes, please carry on.
Okay, yes. So let me give a brief definition of what the mini grid regulation defines a mini grid to be. It's any electricity supply system with its own power generation capacity, supplying electricity to more than one customer, and which can operate in isolation or be connected to a distribution licensee's network. Within this regulation, the term mini grid is used for isolated or interconnected mini grid, generating between 0 kilowatts and 1 megawatt of generating capacity, as I had explained earlier on. So basically, the regulation had stated what you have as objectives for the mini grid regulation. And amongst them, we have to incentivize mini grid investments in Nigeria. So in other words, when you have that, it makes investment into the mini grid sphere attractive, more or less. So incentivizing is making it more cost friendly, let me use the word. Secondly, we have increased access to electricity in unserved and underserved parts of Nigeria, rural and urban. If you notice, our projects majorly cover rural areas, but for instance, I'm going to give an example with Abuja. Kuje would also be termed as a rural area because it's a district. So you would see some of our projects in Kuje. It's in an urban setting, but it's a rural project. So those are just a few of the examples. We have grid extension, which talks about the interconnected, the one that I give examples with connecting to the discos, where you have the mini grid supplying electricity for a number of hours, and then the discos take off to complete the hours. So for instance, maybe within the 24 hours, you could do 12 hours mini grid and then 12 hours for the discos, just so that the community enjoys that 24-hour circle. And then it encourages the use of renewables on small scale. So you can have small hydros, you can have solar home systems, solar mini grids, solar cold rooms. Those are all small scale things that benefit the community, more or less. So what it has under it also is the processes that you must follow to carry out these two mini grid processes. So like for the isolated mini grid, the steps that you must take is first, you must identify the site, which is outside the DISCO's approved expansion plan. So that's for the isolated, so totally away from the grid. Secondly, you can establish contact with the community. So we're very high on that, or we're very key on that. We at REA oftentimes conduct what you call sensitization visits. We do it outside the visit that the developer does. And it's just to enlighten the community on what we intend to do, how it will benefit them, how they're meant to maintain it, and then other requirements that will be needed in the process to make the process smooth. We have signing of exclusivity agreements. Literally, the exclusivity agreement is an agreement that binds the developer and the community. And what it simply means is within that period of a 12-year window, that developer will be the person providing that service to them. So you won't have multiple developers coming to the same site to perform the same function. And then it states some relationships, issues maybe relating to provision of land, the size, and all of those other issues. Then we have other issues relating to building permits from the approved authorities, application of NERC permits in relation to tariffs. Then at tail end, you have the installation. That, in other words, that's a physical aspect of it, the commissioning, and then the full-blown operation. And that's simply for the isolated mini-grid. For the integrated mini-grid, it's a little less cumbersome, I want to use the word, because there's already a structure in place. So still you identify a site that is close to the discos. Then you sign an exclusivity agreement still with the community. In this case, you will have to sign a tripartite agreement. This tripartite agreement has to do with the developer, the community, and the discos, since the discos are now coming in. And then the last stage, before you get to the last stage of the installation and commissioning, they must agree on appropriate tariffs that the community can pay. And of course, since now there are two parties making back, the developer and the discos. So at the tail end, you just have the installation, commissioning, and operation. So majorly, the things that we look out for when we're following this process are particular permits, the environmental impact assessments, the building permits, the development and approval licenses, and then the NERC permits. And then, of course, we emphasize on your incorporation documents. That comes way at the beginning, because that's the foundation, ideally. If the company isn't properly registered, of course, they can't go into that business. So basically, that's the regulation that we have on ground for many.
Thank you so much, Ajia Zainab, for that really exhaustive end-to-end review of the regulation for mini grids. Of course, Ajia Zainab took a little bit more than 5 minutes, but I mean, that's the advantage of getting called in 2008. If you want extra time, then consider getting called in 2008. So, but you've mentioned a few things which will take us straight up to Temple. So Temple, when Ajia Zainab was speaking, she mentioned a lot of things, land rights, doing reviews, company, corporate setup, and all of that. So she's highlighted a few of the things that would expect, a lawyer in the energy space, particularly in the renewable project, to do. But could you just highlight or emphasize a little bit more on some of the services, the actual services that a lawyer provides in the course of a renewable energy project? And would appreciate if you also try to relate those services to some of the services we already do, because more often than not, I think lawyers always, when we think of specialized fields, we just assume that all of that field is about specialist knowledge. I believe some of what we already do as lawyers are relevant to these fields, and sometimes lawyers are not aware that their skill set can easily be carried over into a specialization in some of these areas. So if I like to us, particularly some of the things we already do as lawyers that already qualify us in a sense to be energy lawyers. And of course, you would later tell us about some of the specialist things that energy lawyers do that you would need to acquire if you want to become a proficient player in the energy space. So Temple, if you can hear me, please. I hope you can hear me, Temple. I hope Temple.
Yes.
Okay, I hope you got my question, Temple.
Yeah, I get. So I think it's more from generalist lawyer skills that can be transferred easily to the energy sector, particularly renewable energy space. And
Yes,
then
exactly.
the
And then also the
specialists,
specialist services.
yeah, I get. So, for general services that lawyers already provide that they can easily transfer into this space, right? So, number one, I would understand that every lawyer can review documents, general documents. It's not documents specific to oil and gas, power, technology, or anything. So this is like general documents. If someone says that they want to do something and they want you to review it as a lawyer, I think every lawyer that has been called to the bar can review such documents, right? If a company says that they want to they have an idea of pursuing a renewable energy project in Lagos, in Kano, or in any other states, Anambra or anything, and they want you to review that pitch deck. By generalist lawyers' skills in drafting documents and reviewing documents, they can transfer those skills into reviewing pitch decks or project conceptualization documents for power companies or renewable energy companies. Then when the energy company has decided to go ahead with their project because they have not seen it that it's viable, whether financially or technically. Now, as a lawyer, many lawyers, I wouldn't say all the lawyers, right, but majority of lawyers, they already do some form of incorporation for companies, maybe like PPs or maybe within their firms that they currently work with. So they have incorporated companies in order to prepare many of those corporate documentations like the MEMATs, Memorandum of Association, Memorandum of Understanding, Memorandum of Association, the Articles of Association, and every other document that we need to start up a company, right? So they already can prepare those documents. So if an energy company says that they want to incorporate an SPV to undertake a project, the lawyer can be able to effectively prepare those documents, document their rights in those particular agreements, and then effectively incorporate, right? I also understand that lawyers are also skilled in reviewing generalist kind of documents like partnership agreements, joint cooperation agreement that does not require any specific special knowledge to do. So when when energy company says that they have different shareholders that want to incorporate an entity to execute a power project or renewable energy projects, then and they want something to document their rights, the lawyer can be able to come up with founders agreements. So it doesn't require any special knowledge. So as a lawyer, you can effectively look at contract documentation and then document your rights and obligations of, founders or shareholders coming together to pool resources and execute a project, right? So those are the skills that they can transfer as lawyers into energy projects. And when you move beyond corporation, and we're now going into project implementation. Now, an energy company would say that if an energy company needs a site to carry out the project or undertake the project, then they're talking about land lease or sublease. Most lawyers I know are into property, whether it's special to them or not. So most lawyers are into property. They know how to do.
Only most lawyers I know are into properties. Is unethical.
Sorry, apologies. Dr. Ajayi, can you kindly mute your microphone, please? Dr. Ajayi, if you can hear me, kindly mute your mic.
All right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what I
please
mean
carry
by
on, Tim.
that, So what I mean by that is that a lawyer can easily do a land search, right? They don't need specialized knowledge for that. Is what they have seen maybe their colleagues do, or what they have been into, right? If an energy company says that they want to lease a particular site to undertake that project, and they give you a lease agreement to review, it doesn't need any special knowledge to review, just like tenancy agreements, right? Lease agreement, you don't need to be a specialist to review those kind of agreements, right? Even though I understand that there are some specialist property lawyers, right? But those are like more for property development, like developing real estate or large construction projects, right? But if it's just simple lease, you don't need a specialist knowledge to do that. You can easily transfer your already known lawyer skills into advising an energy company to protect their interest in lease agreements. If an energy company wants to buy a land or purchase a property, land a property to undertake a project, lawyers with their skills can easily pull resources together to know how to advise them on whether that land is encumbered at the land registry, and advise them on how to get consent requirements with the governor, the stamp duties and all the relevant registration that you need for that particular site. So it's something that can easily transfer in terms of when a project company wants to go about constructing their project. Now, once the project company now goes into construction and eventual operation, okay, before they even go into that, they would need licensing. And even though you would need specialized knowledge to know the kind of licensing that they need, preparing an application for a license is a skill that a lawyer can easily transfer from what they already do. Many lawyers have prepared briefs of arguments, right? I've prepared application, I've written letters. So a lawyer can easily write a letter to NEC, telling that this is a company that needs to get either an embedded generation license, or needs to get a mini grid permit, or needs to get an off-grid generation license or anything. It may require special knowledge to know the kind of licenses that they need. But in terms of preparing the application for them and going through regulation to see the documentation you need to submit to NEC or to any relevant authority to actually get a NEC license or an environmental license or anything relating to a license that you need to undertake your project. It's something that a lawyer can easily do because they've been involved in preparing documentation, I've been involved in sending letters. It can easily transfer those skills, so then helping them to prepare the application pack and send to the relevant regulator that they require a license from. Now, once you move beyond that, go into operations or construction operations of that project, that's where you now need, that's where you need special knowledge. Right now, once you get into construction, you're talking about an EPC contractor building a plant. So an EPC contractor to build a plant needs to design your power solution, or maybe you can provide the power solution design to him through maybe a basic engineering documentation to him, right? But first and foremost, an EPC contractor needs to design a power solution. If it's an EPC contractor needs to send you a bill of quantities, a BOQ for the prices that are quoting for you to buy the design power solution, which is the procurement ambit of the EPC. They need to deliver that power solution. You need to send and ship that power solution to your site. All right, they need to clear and ship to your site. Once it gets to your site, they need to do the necessary ground works, which is like civil works, to prepare the installation of the power solution at your site. If it's an hydro project, then there's expansive civil works they are doing. If it is a solar project, whether if it is roof mounted, then you know that they are doing less civil works. If it is ground mounted, then they are doing extensive land civil works. So they do the civil works and then install. Once they install, they go through the process of testing, which is the commissioning of that plant to be able to ascertain that plant can perform in accordance with the agreed performance specifications. Now, all these things actually require specialized knowledge as a lawyer. So it's not something that you have done before. So to do that, you need to get specialized knowledge. You need to, train yourself, attend, seek to pay for courses relating to construction projects, relating to, power development projects, or there's some free courses you can get on some, online platforms that can take you through documentation that you need and the things you need to know as a lawyer to protect your client, right? Now, once you move beyond construction and go into operations, that is when that is when you then see contracts like the O&M, the power purchase agreement, for example. Now, I may say that a lawyer per se can take a stab at a power purchase agreement or O&M agreement and review to some certain extent, right? But to effectively review and protect your client's interest, you need some specialized knowledge and need some specialized trainings to be able to do that, right? So O&M agreement, power purchase agreement, specialized trainings. Now, the last bit I would say, which I would have mentioned initially, was now the financing bit. Even though you can help generally as a lawyer, help power project companies incorporate their entities when it gets to financing of what they're doing, whether they're doing it through sweat equity or they're doing it through the, equity finance or debt finance, is something that you require specialized knowledge. So what they call it project finance skills as a lawyer. So it's not something that comes to you as a lawyer. So you need to take on courses on project finance. You need to take on courses on equity finance. There's some documentation that you need. There's what they call a loan market association that aggregates template contracts for project finance or facility agreements that a lawyer can actually look at and then see and say, okay, look at the clauses that are expected in a facility agreement, in a project finance transaction. Look at what you need to know when reviewing such clauses. Look at what you need to remove. Look at what you need to add Look at what you need to do if you're in Nigeria. If you're not in Nigeria, if you're a project sponsor, if you're a debt facility provider, look at what you need to do. So loan market association, maybe so it's basically paid for, right? But it's something that lawyers can intimidate themselves about, learn, gather those skills, and then properly advising financing of our project, because nobody came with the knowledge from birth. So it's something that everybody acquired as continues to grow as a lawyer, right? So those are the instances I think that specialized knowledge can come in: debt financing or financing of our projects, construction phase documentation, operations phase documentation, properly advising on the project structure, whether you use one company to execute generation and distribution of renewable energy solution, whether you have to incorporate separate entities. Specialized knowledge come into that instance in terms of knowing what the regulations are saying, right, to prevent competition and to prevent jumbling together of different activities, right? So those are areas that you need specialized knowledge in. But in other areas like incorporation, leasing of a site for the power project, reviewing the initial pre-project development documentation like project conceptualization documentation, and the normal copy documentation you need when you want to incorporate. These are things that I know. And then applying for a license. These are skills that I know lawyers already have now that they can easily transfer into those particular subheads.
Thank you so much, Temple, for making energy law experts out of us in just 5 minutes. So I'm sure for those who followed the last session where they were trying to teach us how to use social media, I'm sure once we leave this training, I can go and put on my LinkedIn status. I'll become, an energy law expert after the wonderful exposition you just gave us. Thank you so much, Temple. So just to let everyone know, we'll shortly be taking questions. So if you have your questions, just type them in the chat. We just have another round of questions, and then we'll come to your questions. I already see some questions in the chat. Thank you for those questions. Please keep the questions coming. Our speakers are ready to answer all your questions. So the last round of questions I just want to ask each of our speakers is to really focus this discussion on the actual opportunities available for lawyers. So I just want our speakers to point us particularly in specific areas you think lawyers can immediately come into this space and leverage opportunities. So I'll start with Dr. Sanusi. So particularly, Dr. Sanusi, I want you to help us address particularly the aspect of power sector advocacy and legislative reform space. Do you think enough lawyers are already playing in that space? And if not, what are some of the tips you have for us that would make us more relevant in the space of policy advocacy and legal legislative reforms in the sector? Thank you.
Because the field of renewable energy itself, it's emerging. I would say that there are lots of opportunities that are untapped, not even just from the angle of opportunities for lawyers, but just generally looking at those opportunities as economically, how it can help transform our country and the like. So for lawyers, you guys have a wide latitude in terms of the field that you can play in. You can play in any field. And if you look at the renewable energy space, if you take it from the point of, what my colleague had already mentioned, Temple, looking at the opportunities for consulting, for instance, you could be a consultant and offer your legal consultancy to different players, to government, to private sector, players. You could also, in the civil society space, lawyers can also come in to be that conscience, of the industry in terms of advocating for different rights, advocating for different reforms, advocating for different regulations, to be in place. I remember when we wanted to develop the mini grid regulations, then we had a bit of collaboration with some NGOs, lawyers, in terms of going around the country, stakeholders engagement, to see truly what was needed, what was the pulse. We needed to feel the pulse of the people to know exactly how we're going to craft, and having lawyers around helped a lot. So even as players, as owners of companies playing within the renewable energy field, there's nothing stopping a lawyer from incorporating a company and running a company, a renewable energy a company, providing services. So long as you're able to bring the right technical staff and players together, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And there's nothing also, I see opportunities also for lawyers from the government side. We need more lawyers, in NERC, to help, with the reforms and regulations. We also need more lawyers within the discourse, for instance, especially those that are experienced and vast in renewable energy, and they have acquired, extra knowledge in terms of, renewable energy adoption and development, to also, come in from because if we had lawyers from, the disco side, then when we have it, maybe it wouldn't have been necessary for us to go to court while I was at the REA. I told you that story, because they would know that it's a win-win situation, even for the discos. But I'm glad that we've gotten to the point now where the discos also see a window of opportunity, in collaboration within smaller players, especially within the renewable energy space. So all of these opportunities are there. I think it's just a matter of passion and a matter of choice in terms of which area of specialization suits you more, and also looking at where the niche is. So of course you do a bit of research, see where your passion lies and where the niche is in terms of how you want to progress your career. But I can assure you that the renewable energy field is emerging. There are lots of opportunities. Nigeria has the opportunity to leapfrog its development, leveraging on renewable energy. And if you believe in this, and as a lawyer, you're looking for opportunities, really the sky is the limit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, and for drawing attention to that. I believe a lot of us on the call who are reform, minded, certainly there's a sector you want to make your voice heard as a lawyer. I believe the invitation by Dr. Sanusi is something you should take heed to, because we are definitely, I don't know, for those of you who follow the NEC has released a rash of documents recently transferring power, regulatory, in 3 states at least I've seen. I believe I saw, I think Abia and in or so, at least 3 states have set up their own electricity regulatory agencies and taking over. So for lawyers who want to be in that space, I think that is a huge opportunity. Next to Hajiya Zainab. So Hajiya Zainab, based on your experience, being in the power sector for over, I think 16, 17 years now, what role do you think lawyers can play towards the development of green energy? What are some things you think, you'd want to draw attention to that we can really go out tomorrow and start doing as lawyers that really, make us become players and help the green energy space to develop?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mark. I'll follow up from where Dr. Sanusi stopped. Well, one of the first things is the interpretation of law. He mentioned it earlier. It's very, very key for you to have a lawyer that can guide you on the right path, as I would say. Certain times we have interpretations that are, how would I say, misunderstood most times. So a lot of people sort of have a sense of entitlement where they assume they have some rights, whereas it's the other way around. The second thing that I can talk about is the regulatory compliance. This starts off right from issues relating to your company registration, issues relating to permits that can be gotten while you're starting the mini-grid process, NERC, EIA, as I said, from the Ministry of Environment, building permits, and any other thing that will make your work easy for you. Another aspect is contract management. Of course, we draft, we review, and we perfect contract agreements, both internally, externally, and then we guide contractors, any other third party that would have any interaction with us. We guide them on the proper terms and conditions that would govern the relationship between REA, the community, the developers, and whoever we come in contact with. Policy advocacy, same thing. Lawyers can advocate for favorable policies in relation to their clients, cheaper tariffs, compensation, benefits, and whatnot. Intellectual property. When Dr. Sanusi was an ED in the Rural Electrification Agency, he brought about an initiative, an innovation, would I say, project where different people brought in their initiatives. We had solar cold rooms, we had irrigation pumps and whatnot. So for lawyers on the other end, or the private sector, you can help with patents and trademarks to protect those ideas because they belong majorly to the person that is innovating it. We have issues relating to dispute resolution, which is very, very, very key. It's very, very necessary in each agreement that you have for you to have an arbitration or a dispute resolution clause, because based on normal day-to-day interactions that we have, you're bound to have disputes. So ADR is a very, very hot cake in that aspect. Dr. Sanusi also mentioned lawyers in NERC. Yes, so licensing and enforcement departments. We are an implementing body. However, we do checkmates to certain things. We drop red flags when projects are not being properly implemented, when projects are abandoned. We take legal steps to ensure recovery of funds that have been dispersed but haven't been used. So whereas in NERC, of course, you give regulations for tariffs, costs that would be applied, or some compensation benefits in different situations, and then benefits that would accrue to the consumers. So these are just some of them, but majorly you'd be doing ADR, a lot of contract management. That is what we do usually in the public sector, or in area, I should say.
Okay, thanks so much, Ajia Zainab, for drawing our attention. And just like, during Temple's earlier intervention also, he drew our attention to the fact that there are a lot of existing skills we already have. So, a lot of us here already have basic knowledge of intellectual property, patents, trademarks, and all. And it's good to know that that knowledge also has a value in the energy sector as well. Thank you so much for that. So, last, of course, but by no means the least, Temple want to hear your input, particularly Temple would like to know, are there any courses, and we'll specifically appreciate free online courses we could take to help us grow our expertise in the energy space? So Temple, can you hear me? I hope Temple is still here with us. Okay, I can't immediately seem to see Temple. So let me just encourage anyone who has questions, please put the questions up in the chat. I already have one question from Damak.
Yeah, I think I can hear you now.
Oh yeah, Temple, yes. So please, Temple, I hope you got my question, Temple.
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, so we particularly want to know, if I want to become a specialist in the energy space, what are the courses I can take? Would particularly appreciate if you know any free online courses that our colleagues can start up tomorrow to immediately scale up their knowledge in the energy sector.
Okay, so I think for free online courses, I've not checked recently, but I know that Coursera and Udemy, they typically offer free online courses on power project documentation. So power project documentation, including EPC contracts for gas or solar and projects, power purchase agreements for solar or gas projects, O&M contracts, and many of those core project development that you need for project development aspects of power project transactions. And I know that other than that, there is Focus International that also offers some kind of free courses for debt documentation, so facility agreements on loan documentation for power projects. Facility documentation for okay, yeah. So facility documentation for power projects, the debt facilities, the equity investments agreements, and whatnot. And I think those are like the ones I can remember that are quite free. Udemy and Coursera, you can go there to check as much courses as you can, because it just depends on how determined you are to run through those courses and take the relevant assessments tests, right, or examinations that they would set to issue you a free certificate. But other than getting a free certificate is the fact that you're learning appropriate skills that can guide you when taking a review or drafting from scratch, power purchase agreements, engineering, procurement and construction agreements, operational maintenance agreements. Sorry, and other documentation that you need to run a power project. And also the Focus International that also gives you the ability or the opportunity to learn and look at courses you can take on relevant financing documentation that would also help you when you're negotiating various financing documentation for investors or debt providers in your projects or in the project of your clients, right? And then another means of also getting free trainings is attending as much seminars as you can on power projects. Because many of those seminars, they have many of those seminars and conferences, they have earmarked sessions for issues relating to power projects, whether from the side of financiers or from the side of investors. So if there is an MBA business conference, you check if there is any section on power, or if there's any session on power that will be held during that space, or if there's any session on financing for projects or infrastructure projects in Nigeria that will be held during that space. So you just go to those sessions and listen, right? You can also build contacts with even the speakers to let you in on other conferences that they may be attending or they may be speaking on, so you can get requisite knowledge on those kind of issues, right? And yeah, I think those are the ways a young lawyer or a lawyer that intends to get into the sector can actually get into sector. Get free online courses, put your ears to the ground for seminars, conferences related to power, right? Because I'm sure that there'll be special earmarked sessions for dealing with power issues that they can easily listen in and learn from and further develop their skills. So yeah, I think those are like the two areas that I think we can advise lawyers that want to segment into that particular space to look at.
Thank you so much, Temple, for that. So I'll just re-echo the free online platform.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Udemy and Coursera are two platforms that could help you really get your knowledge upskilled in this area. Personally, I've done courses on Coursera, and the way Coursera works is that you can actually do the courses for free, but if you want a certificate, you pay. If I remember, then it used to be $50 to actually write the exams and get the certificate. So it's a good platform to go to learn, like Temple has said, not just about power directly, but about some of the other things like document review, legal due diligence, and other skills that you could easily transfer to the energy and power sector. So we'll quickly take your questions. We know we are well over time, but I hope you can bear with us because of the challenges we had with the Zoom bombing attack at the beginning of the meeting. So the meeting is a little bit elongated, but We hope to wrap up tops in the next 15 minutes. So the first question I'll take here, I can see Theophilus Oteme's hands raised. Would allow you ask your question shortly, but I'll start with Damap Nanjuan's question. And that is also because Damap Nanjuan is also a 2008 call set. So there's something special about 2008 call set people. I think we have another problem with another Zoom bomber again. Just give me a minute to quickly deal with this before I come back to taking the questions. Just a minute, sorry, so I can quickly identify the person trying to interrupt our meeting and throw them out of the meeting. Just a second, please. Permit me to. Okay, I don't think we have a problem immediately. Okay, fine. So we'll just go on with the first question, which is from Damap Nanjuan. Just a minute. Let me remove. I think there's a problem. I need to remove this participant. Sorry about that. I think we're still having that challenge that some of the Zoom bombers are able to come into our meeting now using some other names. Sorry about that. So the first question is from Damap Nanjuan. So I believe I'll throw this to Dr. Sanusi Ohari. Damap is asking, and this is actually an issue that lawyers face. In terms of electricity distribution, most discos do not provide meters or even transmission poles. And I also know transformers is also a major issue, yet they claim to own it. What is the position of the law when the customer buys everything and yet pays electricity bills to discos? So, Dr. Sanusi, can you throw insight on this? Communities, estates, for instance, in Abuja buy transformers themselves, but the discos come and say we own the transformers, and then discos choose to now connect other people to transformers. What really is the position of the law on the ownership of electricity assets bought by the customers themselves and not supplied by the discos?
As far as I recall, I don't know if there's been any new law or regulation. I think the regulators usually discourage, customers from buying, transformers or poles, because that's the responsibility of, the discos. And this has actually been, budgeted for as part of their expansion plan. So if they are not doing it, I can understand that sometimes the urgency and maybe the delays from the discos prompts people to do this. But there was a time at REA we had to sit down. There was a committee that was set up by the Nigerian Governors Forum, and the REA to take stock of all of the investments that state governments had invested in distribution and transmission. In distribution, transformers, poles, cables, and the likes. And also, REA took stock, and this was going to. Then the plan was to convert all of this to equity, government's equity in distribution companies, but then that didn't really see the light of day. But the general advice is for people not to do it if you can, because the truth is, if you do it, then it becomes like a donation. You're donating it to the discos because they are the ones that by law have the franchise over those areas, and they are the ones that have access to it. So you cannot. It's different from just buying a generator where you operate it yourself. If you have a transformer or if you contribute to buy a transformer, you cannot claim to own it because it's being connected to the distribution lines and it's being regulated by, NERC, and, the primary owners and those that have access to it, engineers from the discos and maybe from sister government agencies like NEMSA, and the likes. So it's unfortunate, but the law, the position of the law is that you don't do it. The truth is, if you do it, then you're basically donating it to the discos.
Access one of them.
Very useless.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Then I see Theophilus Oteme has hands up. Theophilus, please go ahead and ask your question, and you can let us know which of the speakers you particularly want the question addressed by. Theophilus Oteme, you can unmute, I believe. Theophilus, are you having challenges on muting yourself? Yes, so Theophilus, you can unmute yourself now and ask your question. Or if you have any challenges, you could also type the question in the chat box. Okay, it seems Theophilus Temek is not able to unmute himself or to hear me, but Theophilus, I've granted you admin privilege to be able to unmute your mic. So you can unmute your microphone. Okay, it seems Theophilus is still able to unmute, even though he has perhaps he has network challenges. Apologies, I noticed that we are still having trouble with the people trying to hack our meeting. So please, we apologize for that. They are using people's names who are already in the meeting to camouflage and come in and then try to start scribbling things and take over the meeting. So at this point, we'll begin to draw the webinar, the session to a close. I noticed, we are still going to give all our speakers just 1 minute each to give us their parting shots, their final thoughts, just anything. Of course, we'll be expecting that maybe Temple will tell us how Templars can give each of us a client in the energy law space. Temple, I hope you'll be gracious enough to, to do that. But I hope I saw the Law Week Planning Committee chair in the meeting, so he'll be giving us a closing remark as well. So I'll just start with Apologies again. We are still having the same challenges. I hope you can hear me now. We are still having the same challenges with the people trying to take over our meeting. I think this has been a very interesting meeting. So let me just call on our speakers to give their final remarks, and then before we call on the Law Week Planning Committee chair to give his final remarks. So we'll start with Dr. Sanusi. Just in 1 minute, what are your last thoughts that you'd want to leave with us?
Well, just to thank you for inviting me onto your platform, and also to encourage you that this is one of the means through which you share information, and a lot of your lawyers and members can also benefit. Although just to also encourage them to do a lot of research, to learn more about what's going on, and then also try and seek opportunities like this one, like this platform, where we have players, come in to speak about what's going on, and maybe you could just be inspired from there. But thank you for providing the platform, and I look forward to more encounters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanusi. Thank you so much for joining us on this session. So I'll move over next to Temple. Temple, can you give us your final thoughts? Yeah, Temple, can you hear me? Okay, and then maybe I'll just go on to Aisha. Can you hear me? Can you just give us your final thoughts before we call up the Law Week Committee chair to wrap up the session? Seems Temple is no longer in the meeting. Aja Zainab, can you hear us? Okay, Aja Zainab is also not in the meeting, and I suspect that the meeting is a Law Week Committee chair on the meeting, so you can wrap us, Mr. Victor Giwa. Okay, I notice he's also not in the meeting, and I suspect that the people trying to take over our meeting are still trying hard to take over the meeting. So at this point, permit me, ladies and gentlemen, to thank you all for coming. Also, thanks to our speakers who have all graciously shared of their, their knowledge and their time.
Hey, motherfucker.
At this point, bring the meeting to an end. Can I just ask the host, please end the meeting, because I see that one of the people attacking the platform has taken over one of the host privileges.